So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We're back again. The channel is My Take on It with Dr. Victor Obasuyi. Today we're co-hosting together again. And my co-host, I am Dr. Victor Obasuyi. My co-host is Azuka Obasuyi. She's an engineer by profession.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's nice to meet each and every one of you again. And today's topic, we are going to be focusing on the challenges of coming in as an immigrant and settling in, and also succeeding as a professional immigrant, because both of us have our professional degrees. I in chemical engineering and my husband in Victor in optometry.
Yeah, so thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We appreciate you all for the comments from our last video together. Obviously, it's a learning curve for us, working together as a couple. We've come a long way from my time as coming into the country, not knowing what my fate was going to be, to where I am today. I think there's a lot for me to be grateful for, especially in a country like Canada that has given me the opportunity to be able to showcase my talent. And I believe if I could do it, everyone else can do the same thing.
It is the same with me as well. I came in here for my master's in chemical engineering. Of course, I for one, always I'm looking for ways and opportunities to improve myself and expand, in my career, advance my career. But being hardworking and determined, I will still say that the amount of hard work involved, is still a lot. It can actually take you unawares, regardless of how far, you've been in your career. You find like, having to come in and start all over again, and having to prove yourself to people around that, I have what it takes, can be really challenging, even for the most, it can be daunting. I have a lot of people that come in here, and after some time, they just pack up and, and left the country because it was actually too hard. But it is doable. That's all I always tell people. Yeah, it is doable, but you gotta come in prepared for the amount of for lots of hard work.
Yeah, I believe same way. Obviously, the most important thing is determination and the willingness to succeed. I believe there's nothing one puts effort into that at the end of the day you don't get results. For a lot of people that come in as professional or immigrants that are professionals, the biggest challenge is having to start all over. A lot of times at home, you're doing so well. You have chauffeur, you have nanny, you have house help. Then suddenly you find yourself in a country where you have to do almost everything yourself.
Everything yourself, yeah. It can be challenging. Like I came in, I was already working. I've worked like for more than 4 years in an engineering firm. I'm used to calling the shots. So having to come in and, having to prove myself all over was equally exciting and fun. It was something that I wanted to do, and I was prepared. I was prepared coming in here to work hard. Again, I came in as to do my master's in chemical engineering, and I did that for 2 years. But there are a lot of challenges. First of all, there was a culture shock. How expensive it was to live, abroad. There was this story I told I always tell, where I paid my rent, and I kind of expected, well, I've paid for the whole year, only to be told that, okay, that rent is only for a month. And I'm like, for real? That's the same amount that I used to pay for a whole year, where I'm coming from in Nigeria. So I have to, figure out a way to survive. Thankfully, being a Nigerian, I also found out that they have a lot of scholarships once you maintain a certain average. And that was what I asked. When I heard that, I'm like, that's just it? A certain average? Can you please show me where the library is? Right? But one of the challenges I found was, although I was doing quite well, technology was a huge problem for me. when I mean technology, there are tons of softwares that kids here start using computers at a very young age. So there were tons of softwares that they're used to, they're very comfortable using it to solve problems and to do their homework and assignments in school. And you find that you're like, okay, what is that? I've never even heard like that software. So it's almost like you're learning, trying to get ready, like preparing for an assignment, and you still have to know whatever software, because you can. One of us actually did an assignment that required a software, and he did that like for a whole weekend, manually. And when he brought it, it was just this big sheet of paper. The professor asked him, "What is this for?" He said, "Well, that is your solution." And he said, "And you did that manually?" He was like, "Yeah." He said, "No. You're required to use a software. Then you have to go back and find that you have to learn that, how to use that software to do your homework and projects." So that for me was one of the challenges, and how expensive it is here. Then also the food. I needed my comfort Nigerian foods, and it was really hard sourcing and getting the type of food, Then you have to deal with getting to know people. Coming into a country, it was so cold, and I really don't know anyone, how to navigate and go around. But thankfully, I was surrounded. I was lucky to find this group of Nigerians, which included my dear friend here that later became my husband. So they were part of the group of people that helped me settle in and. Yep. Thankfully, we have a good story to tell.
Of course.
Yeah.
So I think it's the same for almost every one of us. I remember having, when they told me I needed to go back to school for a few courses, I think a lot of professionals are coming. That's also a big shocker to most of them.
Yes, yeah.
People believe I've almost gotten to the pinnacle of my career before coming here. Yeah. Why do I have to go back to school again? I already know what I need to know. Unfortunately, for a lot of people, until you actually go back to school, you really don't know how much there is to know, to practice in the Canadian experience, to have the Canadian experience, or what it takes to practice in an advanced world. So for me, I always tell people, don't look at the negative part of being asked to go back to school, but look at the amount of knowledge. They say knowledge is never wasted.
It's never wasted.
Look at the amount of knowledge you're going to acquire, and the Canadian experience that you don't have, or when you came into the country, obviously going back to school will help a lot in exposing you to the way things are done here, professionally and ethically. So for me, that's the way for me, that was one of the biggest challenges, having to go back to class after how many years of practice in Nigeria but at the end of the day, it was worth it. It was definitely worth it.
And also for me, outside having, I came in straight to do my master's in chemical engineering. So I came in prepared to go to school, but I was actually shocked at the amount of, the differences in learning, or the knowledge level that you have. Granted, I've been out of school for some time, so there were the hiccups of trying to get back into the learning student mode. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I found the expectations and some of the focus of learning back in Nigeria and the focus of learning here. Here is more hands-on. Nigeria, you are required to do things from first principle. You are required to, as an engineer, you will solve lots of mathematical equations. You actually take pride in saying hey, I can, prove everything from first principle. But here, it's mostly application-based. And so they really don't care how, good you are, whether you have a 2-1 or not. So all they want to know is, how are you able to apply that same knowledge to real-life experiences? And for me, that is something that I really did appreciate in going to school here, because I can easily relate or be able to transfer those knowledge, those things that it's like I can solve things from first principle. I can give you write on whatever information that you need. But how do you transfer that same knowledge into something, that is tangible, that is, real life experience? That for me was a big eye opener and a huge takeaway, for
for me it was similar too.
Yeah.
Because I remember in getting into optometry class back home in Nigeria, I know personally, probably a lot of things were
theoretical
all over the place.
Yeah.
Theoretically, I was very strong. But when I got into the clinics, I realized how weak I was. There are so many things that, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of that. Or there were things that we did in school that you understand the science of it, or you understand the theory of how every principles is supposed to know.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you couldn't tie them together. And until you're able to tie these things together, you find most times your knowledge base you're all over the place. But as soon as a patient starts talking, you're able to know, this was why we had to learn this. This was how we had to learn this. Oh, no wonder we had to learn this.
Yeah.
So for me, the fact that I was able to now bring everything together and understand the concepts behind, instead of just knowing a little bit of this, I was now able to understand the concept behind most of the things that we were taught in school. And most times if you understand concepts, instead of just knowing the answers, no matter how the question goes, you'll be able to answer it.
Yeah.
Same way when a patient is sitting in your patient chair, once they start talking, you can understand. You know what the next question is to ask. You know what answers to expect. So it's a lot easier compared to just knowing A, B, C, and not being able to tie them together. So for me, I think that was the best part of going to school here.
Yeah. So another thing I found, they have a lot of opportunities here. Opportunities that, I didn't really understand I remember when I just came in and they were talking about volunteering. Where I come from, there wasn't really anything about volunteering. You gotta be paid, So those are part of the culture shock. And someone told me, no, you gotta get yourself out there. You have to volunteer to learn the experience. And I'm like, why do I need those? I think one of the volunteering was where I have to do some phone calls. And I'm like, I just sit down there and I'm just calling. But I found that one of my volunteering experience that I had then actually came in quite handy because I had to work with the disability office in the school, right? And it actually exposed me to knowing there are students that back where I'm coming from, they wouldn't even be in the university in the first place. There are some people that for them to write an exam, I have to, they use a huge magnifying screen.
Low vision.
They
glasses.
have low vision, right? And I have ones that every exam that they need to take, you need to transcribe it for them because again they have they need to hear. So I was exposed to different aspects of learning. Learning is not where I'm coming from. It was just mostly visual, but there I learned that there were lots of opportunities. So I learned that there were a lot of opportunities for different kinds of students. There were a lot of accommodations for people that have not necessarily learning problem, but things that could deter them from having the full experience. Experiences in
little challenges
in learning. So it was a huge for me eye opener. In as much as I did the volunteering, it was a big takeaway from for me. I wouldn't have had that kind of opportunity if I didn't volunteer.
True.
So, yeah.
True. Well, that's very true. I think coming from a third world country to a place like this, it exposes you, like you just said, to the fact that everybody is useful.
Yeah.
The economy can derive a lot from everyone. Back home, there are some people that, probably because they have one or two challenges, they are almost written off completely.
Yeah, and they are super smart.
A lot of them are super smart.
Super smart.
But here, with the help of the government and everything, you find, unless the person that doesn't really want to do anything, other than that, there's room for everyone. And I think that's one of the things that I appreciate so much in this country. People that are legally blind can still go to school and do what they want to do and still achieve a lot.
Yeah.
You know, the ones that can't, people that have mobility problems, same thing. Like, you rarely find anyone that is willing to, that cannot succeed. Of course, there will be challenges because of what nature has thrown at them. So it might take a little longer time. But at the end of the day, they're able to do it.
And another thing I found, like having to come here, go back to school, is the differences. You know, the professor-student relationship.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was a big eye opener. Like the first time I was in class, and someone, you know, the professor said, "My office is always open, and you can just come in and, you know, ask questions. I'm there to help you." You know, where I come from, that is like, why you don't need to go to the professor. What is that for? Right? And in as much as I had that opportunity, I never really took advantage of that till, like, you know, much later in, I think I've stayed almost a year, and one of the professors, you know, asked me, like, "Okay, you seem to be struggling with this." And I'm like, yeah. She said, "Stop by at my office." I was terrified, you know, going to the office. But, you know, watching all the other students, I found like even one was like, "Hi, Peter, can I, you know, I need some help, Peter."
Same
and I'm like,
it was an experience for me too.
Who is, you know, Peter? That's a professor, not just a professor. That was the head of the department. And this person in the fourth year is saying, "Hi, Peter." You know, and when I have to do my teaching, I also did the teaching I was an assistant for one of the professors. You need to have an open door policy where they can walk in anytime and they tell you they're having a problem, and you have to make out time to teach them. And if the students are struggling, it is your job. It was the job between me and the professor to figure out a way to break it down. So that was something that is available that I was like, I didn't really know. I was very uncomfortable using that opportunity because I didn't really, you know, where I'm coming from, you don't just walk up to a professor and anyone, right, and start asking for help. So I have to let people know, like, you know, studying here and studying back home, that's a big difference and a big plus. You know, you have the support, and when your job is just to go out there, reach out, and there are tons of people that are really willing to, you know, to help you, you know, excel and succeed.
Yeah, that's very true. I completely. I had an experience where one of the students came in late. Back home, once my lecturers have started their lectures, you're not allowed to come in. So here I am in class, and the student walks in slowly, strolls into the class. The kid is already late, and the next thing he goes to sit at the front. And he's raising his hand up to say, "I don't understand." So which part do you don't understand? He almost took us to the beginning of the lectures.
The lecture, yes.
And I was thinking the lecture is going to be furious.
Yeah.
Like, you came in late, why are you dragging the whole class back? To my surprise, the guy took his time, went back, and explained the whole thing, the whole concept that, you know. So for me, it was a big shock.
Yeah.
Because back home, you dare not. You know, you come in late, you know the rules. If you're late, you stay outside.
Stay outside, yeah.
You know, then suddenly you find somebody's coming in late and pulling everybody behind. And the lecturer is willing to take his time. He took his time, actually, to explain the whole thing. Then there was also another episode where that kind of struck me. There was a lecture that we took where one of the students didn't do very well, and that's because he was not always in class. Then we did another course. This time, at least that we could understand. We did another course where like almost half of the students were struggling. So I was asking a colleague, one of my friends, like, "What do you think we're going to do?" So like, no, we have to go back to the lecturer to let him know that we're not prepared for the test yet. So we have to, he has to move it or take us through it. So I had to ask, how is that possible? The lecturer already fixed the date for the test.
Yeah.
So he said, no, that the students have to assess the lecturer at the end of the term.
Yeah.
And that's the same way the lecturer is assessing the students to see if the students know what they are doing. The same way the students have to do an assessment of the lecturer to see if he knows how to deliver his stuff.
Yeah.
So you find that there are checks and balances. So because of that, the lecturer has to make sure that what he's being paid to is to deliver the message to the students and make sure the students understand it. It's almost impossible for you to deliver your lecture properly and find that half of the students in the class are not passing, while they are passing the other lecturer's course. So obviously for me, I realized at the point that, wow, something is very different between the system here and what we have back home. Back home, it was not unusual for the whole class to fail one course. And nothing wrong with that, nothing wrong with it at all. But I sat down to think of it critically and realized, okay, you know what, this really makes sense. If the lecturer as a professor is hired to teach students, his job is to look for a way to be able to deliver this message so the students can understand it. If you're teaching a class and the whole class fails, obviously why do they need to retain you for the next academic session? It means you might be the brightest lecturer, but it just means you don't know how to deliver the message. So, and the school hired you to deliver the message. The school already knows that you're bright as a professor. But they want you to deliver the message to the students so the students can understand too. So if you can't deliver the message and all the students are failing your course, obviously the school doesn't need you. There's a problem.
Yeah.
But back home, the lecturers took pride in the fact that, look, everybody failed my course. That means his course is...
Actually, a lot of lecturers are notorious.
Yeah, we're notorious. The same thing in my school.
Yeah, they're notorious.
Same thing in my school.
Like, you know them, you have to, like, read and almost kill yourself, like, to even get a C or a D.
You're in my school, University of Benin, the older class will tell you as soon as you come in that, look, this lecturer A, lecturer B, lecturer C, watch them.
Yeah.
They can keep you behind for 4 years, and they don't care.
They don't care.
That means they keep failing you. Every year you go back to write a course, they'll fail you. So 4 years. So you find you are in first year and you're writing, you have final year students coming to take the same course as receipt with you. And then in final year, which means they've been writing the course for the last 4 years.
Yeah. I don't think...
Why will the school keep a lecturer like that?
Yeah.
To me, I think it's absolutely... insane for that kind of lecturer to still be there. You're a smart professor, true, but the main purpose why you are there is to deliver the lecture.
Yeah.
If you cannot pass the message across, you have to look for a different job.
Actually, for me, one of the courses that I was the teaching assistant, we had that problem. It is an abstract course, and we find like a lot of students were struggling. And I think after the first, one of the major midterm exams, I think almost 50% of them failed. And the professor now said, Azuka, we're in trouble. And in my mind, I'm like, no, I'm not in trouble. My job is to assist you, But I could tell that he was in this position where I've never seen a professor be before. He was actually panicking. And between both of us, we had to figure out a different method of delivering the same. He was like, look, as a teaching, I am the assistant here. So we had to collaborate to figure out a different way of breaking it down. And that actually helped me because, in teaching someone something that is that is abstract.
You know it more. You get to know it more.
Being able to break it down into simpler concepts that they can easily grasp. That was, that also helped me, and I was forced to problem solve in a different way because it's almost like, okay, how do I pass this same message across? And at the end of the day, I can proudly say that almost 70%. It wasn't as if we, kind of changed the content. It's just that we changed the delivery of content, right, for the student. And at the end of, I didn't even, coming into that course, I wouldn't have thought of,
being able to break it down that much.
Yeah, break it down that much. So, what we're trying to say is that coming in here as an immigrant, we came in both as professionals. It is difficult, but it's
doable.
It is doable, right? You just have to make up your mind that give yourself at least, we say 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, 3
right?
to 5 years.
Yeah,
3 to 5 years.
3 to 5 years, depending on what your background and profession. But that is getting your degree. Then you have to also go into get your write your professional exams, certifications. But the rewards are, the rewards are, you get tons of reward. Like, having
it makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
For me, if I didn't, as a practitioner today, I've mentored lots of foreign trained doctors. The fact that what I learned in school on being able to deliver the message to the next person made a huge difference to me. When I have students now, I understand the fact that, look, no matter what you know, the students are there to learn from you.
Yes.
So even as the intern doctors, when they come in, I know, like, I have to be able to pass the message across. They are not there to check how much I know. They have to be able to go out on their own and deliver what are the information that I've passed across to them,
and they're going to
do it very well.
And they're going to rate you at the end of the day.
Yeah, they also rate me at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the things that I think probably should be implemented back home, where students at the end of the academic session are allowed to rate their professors. The ones that students think are doing very well should be retained. If students feel that the lecturer is not delivering and the assessment of the lecturer is poor, he or she should be allowed to go. There's no reason why the school should keep such a lecturer. It's an absolute waste of waste of funds and waste of time. Because at the end of the day, the students now have to do the work of the lecturer. Sad enough, some students will still do all their studies, and you find lecturers failing you for not buying their handouts and things like that. But in the Western world, those things don't apply. It's either you know it and you know it. There's no mark for whether you bought handouts or you didn't buy handouts, which we had in my case in school. I think it was 5 marks for buying handout, or some courses up to 10 marks for buying handout, just the fact that you bought handout. So if you didn't buy the handout, it means you're only struggling for 90% of the marks.
Another thing I found, coming in here as a professional, is that a lot of the skills here are transferable. So in as much as you came in, let's say, as an optometrist, and for me as a chemical engineer, and it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm stuck, only in that profession. I can still take some of the skills that I have and transfer to a different profession,
Sure, very true.
So that's another thing that I found. So if you come in here, I will encourage whoever is coming in to get in.
Be open.
So you have to be open. You have to, if possible, go back to school, right? Get certified, and if you're lucky, if you're one of the lucky few that you're able to get a job right on, right? I would say that is good, but you still have to find ways to get all the certificates and keep improving yourself, so that you are I don't want to say, is it marketable or your
marketability.
Yeah, you have to increase your marketability, and that way you are competitive at the same time, right? But also know that it's a lot of the skills are transferable. It is doable. It is hard. It is doable. As Victor and I, we went through the system, and we can, tell you, when people come in, it's okay, forget what it is that whether you're a consultant back home, whatever, just, keep that mindset, because for us, it's mostly the number of
humble yourself.
The number of degrees, you have a lot of degrees back home. Here, what
can you do with it?
What can you do with it?
Yeah, so for me, another thing she mentioned was the issue of volunteering. I know, I don't remember doing volunteer work back home other than youth service. And even at that, we were paid a little bit for it. And I think we even went on strike one time that the amount wasn't enough. At least they gave you stipends for your travel allowance and accommodation and everything, which was still fairly good. And I served at the hospital, so there were a little bit of tokens that were added to my youth service allowance from by the hospital. But in this part of the world, it's highly recommended that instead of you spending time at home while you're trying to find your feet, volunteer. It will come in, the experience will come in handy when the time comes. You may not be volunteering in your field. If you can find one in your field, even if working as just be in that environment. You're a doctor back home, true. Look for an hospital to volunteer. First and foremost, it brings you closer to the doctors in the clinic, at the hospital, or your professional colleagues. You don't go in the first day and tell them, I was a consultant back home. It should be a gradual process. Yeah. Because when you do that, it means it's like you're showing off. So most times they'll write you off immediately. So just go in there, be humble enough, do what you're supposed to do, even if it's just filing, helping the nurses or whatever it is. Do it and do it very well. Over time, there will be opportunities where for you to now actually introduce yourself very well once you're comfortable in that environment. When you need references, that is where the volunteer experience will come in. Yeah. It will come in because those people now know you. Yeah. They can better say one or two things about you. Yeah. And the fact that you humbled yourself enough as a consultant to probably do like the low of the lowest job in the office without being asked, without asking for any remuneration, tells a lot about your personality. Yeah, and that counts. It tells a lot. Yeah. I've had people that are ophthalmologists back home come into my clinic. I'm an optometrist. I've come into my clinic to do volunteer hours, and for me, I don't think twice when I have to write reference letters or recommendation for these guys when they ask me. So that's where the volunteer experience comes in. Sometimes, as a practitioner, I might decide, okay, this person is volunteering in my office. Let me give the person a token to take care of maybe transport and little things like that. But there are some that come in and they don't have Canadian experience. But at the beginning, all they want is how much are you going to pay me? So for me, that's it's a red flag. And I always advise people, when you go in, what you want is the experience. You don't need, it's not the money that's bringing you there at that stage. So let's learn to take advantage of that volunteering. It will help a lot.
Yeah, and what I can add to the volunteering, from when I did a lot of volunteering for myself, I found like there are a lot of soft skills that I picked up.
True.
Yeah, during the volunteering, during my volunteering, that actually came in handy. Like much later, like no one is going to teach you that when you get a job finally, people expect you to know, like there are some, that's actually where that Canadian experience thing comes in. Yeah. Well, how are you dealing, because it's not how you deal with the I don't want to say like customers, how you deal with your clients. There are those subtleties that you can only pick up when you are in that environment. You are like, okay, now I finally get it. This is how this is done. That's how, you quickly see the differences, in how people are addressed, in what is acceptable and what is not acceptable, right? So True. That's one. Then when I am always a strong proponent of going back to school. Going back to school here is totally different from the way it is back home. You can actually be working here and you still be in school. Yeah. So,
there's more flexibility.
There's more flexibility. There are tons of online experiences. Online online courses that you can take. So when I say going back to school, it doesn't necessarily mean the way it is back home, when I mean back home in Nigeria, where you have to like stop everything. You can still be working and you are in school. But the good thing about going to school is the connections that you make. Yeah. There are like tons of people that you would not normally have access to, that you can only have access in that environment, especially if you're lucky enough to be going back to school in the same field. You know, you're going to meet like in a senior, if you're an engineer, senior engineer, it's like, where are you going to meet them? Where would you, like, you are new,
you're just coming to
coming into the country. Where will you have had that opportunity to meet them? So when you're volunteering, say, and maybe I've been somewhere where I have a friend of mine that says she went to volunteer somewhere. She is doing, I think, that in one field, and she found like there are members of the board in one of the biggest the industry that she's actually aiming to go to. Is also a volunteer there, and in talking, she's like, "Oh, I'm new in the country." I'm the person is like, "Oh, wow, I've seen you, I've watched you. You are so like you're working, you work hard." And she gave him her card, and it's like once you're done, you know, call me up. Look, it's not like back home where you need someone to call another person. No, here it's all about that connection that you make in the networking that you get. So when I say go back to school, volunteering, those are the two things you're targeting, not necessarily the money. Here it's more about making connections with people that might eventually help you in the future when you now are ready to start your new career.
Yes. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This is where we're going to call it a day. Again, I'm Dr. Victor Obasuyi, and my co-host is
Azuka Obasuyi. I'm a chemical engineer.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you next week. Again, for those that have not subscribed to the channel, please do so. Continue to share our videos. We appreciate every one of you. Questions, throw them in the comment section. Like the video, and please share.
And we really need your comments. I get excited when I get to see some comments. I have someone that say, "Oh, you need to laugh some more." And those comments they are like gold to me, because this is all new to us. We are trying this is all new. So if you can kindly leave some comment for us, that would be greatly we greatly appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, bye for now.